Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video in this Look Artistry series. I have a few of these videos in the works. I'm playing a little bit of catch up here now that Casey and I are back in Michigan during this quarantine period for the foreseeable future. But today, I'm very excited to be talking about my new, just released book, An Inch of Whiskey. In this video today, I'm going to be talking about the book itself, kind of how it came about, and I'll be talking a little bit about what the self-publishing process was like for me personally. So if you're just here for the self-publishing stuff, that's great. I'll make sure to leave a timestamp somewhere here or in the description. So before we get started, if you haven't yet, and it is time for the plug right now, I'm sorry, you can pick up my new book, An Inch of Whiskey. It's available right now on Amazon. I'll leave links for everything down in the description below. Please do definitely check it out. So I wrote a book, and that is surprising to some people. I feel like the majority of my creative output is in the digital space. Apart from the acting stuff, even sometimes the acting stuff, I feel like most, if not all, of my artistry is consumable in some sort of digital capacity. My photography, short films, these videos, everything until this book. So it is a departure from my norm, but that is exactly why I think this is so exciting. I began this project as a sort of challenge to myself. I've always had an interest in writing, but until the idea for An Inch of Whiskey rolled around, I hadn't yet come up with an interesting enough approach to writing that I felt was challenging. I didn't just want to write a book, you know, I wanted to write something that was just outside of what you might expect a book to be. Call it a personal twist, call it whatever you want, but if I was gonna write something, it needed to be a little odd in more ways than just one. It needed to feel like an extension of my existing artistry, if that makes sense. So An Inch of Whiskey could be broadly categorized as a collection of poetry. Although I don't know what a professional opinion of this work is, I haven't really asked anybody, nor do I think that's a smart idea, but that's what it is. The idea came around in early 2016. I was boarding a Manhattan-bound L train at Broadway Junction in Brooklyn, so for anyone who's familiar with the area, there's a little extra information for you. But the idea just kind of came to me, run-on sentence poetry. So I just started kind of thinking about what that could look like, or what I could do with it, and what kind of challenges would come along with it. So I officially started the project in early 2018. I essentially wrote 2 pieces a day until I had 150. At the time, I was shooting for closer to 200, but 150 kind of felt like the end, so that's where I stopped. I would start with a thought, a sound, or an image, and one word would just flow into the next, and I just kept going until I felt like I had reached the end of that sentence. Some of the pieces are really short, while others are really long. They're largely just copied over from the notebook that I wrote them in. I didn't take any out, I didn't add any afterwards. They're as close to word for word from the day I wrote them as I could get. Less a few spelling errors, which of course I didn't notice until after my first manuscript had been approved, but that's just how these things work. So I wrote, edited, formatted, self-published. I did everything myself. The illustrations, of course, are not mine. They're done by my very talented friend, Bird Peterson. I will, of course, be linking her stuff down below as well. Overall, I'm very, very thrilled with how everything kind of came together at the end, and I do have her to thank for that, so don't miss a chance to catch some more of her work. So I wanted as much complete creative control over this project as possible. And for anyone watching who is also considering self-publishing, I would strongly recommend it for that reason. I did consider submitting manuscripts to different publishers. There was a few that I was looking at, some more that were recommended to me, but I think I ultimately decided not to because I wasn't really sure what that was gonna do. You know, like if any of the submissions would sort of catapult the project in a direction that I wasn't ready to go in, or maybe I wasn't prepared for. Even if they would have agreed to publish my work the way I wanted the pages to be, you know, the book trim, all of that, I really don't think that they would have let me handpick an illustrator, or even to be allowed to have an illustrator. Which was, looking back, one of the most rewarding aspects of the project for me. They likely would have had some opinions about the layout, how to fit my work within existing guidelines and styles. You know, it's poetry, so let's make it look like a poetry book. It'll sell better that way, you know, that kind of thing. They probably would have designed the cover themselves too. I don't know. Yeah, these things made me nervous. I wanted to be able to make the choices myself because this is my work and I am protective of it, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. But there are, of course, pros and cons to self-publishing, which I will talk about now. Things that I knew going in, things that I definitely didn't learn until much later. For anyone who's seen any of my other videos in this series, you'll know that the process for me is the most important part to be open about, so here we go. Just to quickly get this out of the way, I wrote the book in pen and paper. I did sort of a rough draft on Google Docs. I transferred everything over to Adobe InDesign for formatting, and I ultimately published using Amazon's KDP or Kindle Direct Publishing, which is their self-publishing service. I landed on Amazon's KDP because costs were generally pretty fair. I didn't have to handle shipping or anything myself, nor am I forced to order a reserve of my book, which some places do. Amazon is familiar to people, really easy to use, but the biggest thing for me is that I really consider this project to be finished. I'm already on to the next thing, and I'm not usually authoring stuff, so I don't really have time to dedicate to, replacing a damaged copy or, general customer service shenanigans. Amazon takes care of all of that for me. So that was definitely the biggest selling point for me when I was still deciding on which service to use. When it comes to the long-term project commitment, not that small things don't pop up, but there's little else for me to do now apart from advertise and things like that. So a few tips for anyone who's self-publishing or doing anything similar here. First off, I would hold off for as long as possible before you start formatting your project in something like InDesign. It is nice to see your work in sort of a professional looking format, seeing what it's going to look like when it's printed, rather than being just cobbled together on like a Microsoft Word document or something. But it really is best to sort of go in and start placing your InDesign elements as close to the end as possible. Once you start going in and experimenting and fiddling around with everything after the fact, you can very quickly end up with a messy InDesign file. And in my case, I kind of shot myself in the foot. I imported everything too quickly. I started messing with everything, and I, ended up with that disaster file. And it also ended up being the most updated version of my manuscript. So none of the edits, changes were backed up anywhere else. So any of the edits that I did do to the manuscript ended up changing everything else. The layout, I started overriding master pages by accident. Page numbers, for whatever reason, were just popping up everywhere randomly throughout the book. It was bad, and it took a long time to clean up. So unless you're supremely confident with your InDesign abilities, I would hold off for as long as possible. Speaking of layout, before you import anything into any program, you should have an idea at that point which self-publishing service you want to use and what their accepted book trim sizes are, what their cover material options are, paper material, color options. Some self-publishing services don't print in color. Not everybody needs that, but if they do, they might not even support the kind of paper material that's best for printing large illustrations. Your pages might start bleeding through. In my case, I have some full-page illustrations, so I was very careful to make sure that they wouldn't ruin the pages around them. Speaking of printing in color, something that I did not know until my manuscript was already approved. It not only costs more to print in color, but if there's any color in your book at all, excluding the cover, of course, it will usually count as a book that prints in color. So what I mean by that, my book is 184 pages, 30 some of which are in color, which is way less than half. But if you think that you're gonna save money by only having some color here or there through the book, you won't. You will be charged as if every printable page is in color. So be careful is my advice there. The paperback version of my book is priced just a little bit higher than I wanted it to be, for exactly that reason. So definitely know that going in. If you're planning on publishing your book in both physical and digital versions, and if you are using Amazon's KDP specifically, hold off on trying to format your digital copy too early. There's a free open source program out there called Calibre, and generally people like using that program for digital manuscript file conversion. So Kindle, for example, has their own file format called Mobi. They don't accept submissions in PDF, EPUB formats at all. Your manuscript will need to be converted to their file format or they won't even touch it. I tried using Calibre for the digital version of my book, and it sucked. It sucked so bad that I actually couldn't do it. Me sitting here talking to you right now, I was unsuccessful in properly converting my file to Kindle's format. But John, your book is out on Kindle. That doesn't make any sense. I know, and there is a reason for that. And this is what I wish I knew before I spent 2 actual weeks trying to get this conversion to work, and why you should wait too. Amazon's KDP has a manuscript conversion tool that is built directly into their self-publishing platform. But unless I totally missed it somewhere, I don't think you can utilize this tool until you upload the first manuscript file for your physical publication, but I can't confirm that. You upload your paperback version and they say, hey, maybe put it on Kindle, and they convert your file for you. I don't know what the differences are between Calibre and the KDP tool, but the primary issue that I was running into was image resizing. I wanted the images on the Kindle to remain, full page, full screen, but for whatever reason, I couldn't figure it out using Calibre. It was just auto-sizing all of my illustrations, seemingly however it pleased. It didn't treat my illustrations like they were pages, but the KDP tool did. And I don't know why. I'm not really asking any questions. It worked, so I'm just not messing with it. So something else that I didn't know going into Amazon's KDP specifically, depending on how you ultimately format your book will either be eligible or ineligible for widespread distribution. This means that if your book is operating within certain Amazon specific guidelines, Amazon may take your book and put it up on store shelves, like in a Barnes & Noble or something. My book was ineligible, and I believe this was a combination of printing cost factors. I believe you can see when you're uploading your manuscript and when you're choosing which options that you want for your publication, it lets you know when you cross over into ineligible territory. So if you'd prefer your book to be eligible for widespread distribution, I would look into those parameters sooner than later. So wrapping up here, I think one of the big motivators for me when I was working on this project was just this idea of a little bit every day. I myself was one of those people wondering if that approach was really worth it. Does it really add up to a finished final product? And yeah, unsurprisingly, I was very right to test that out for myself. I really made this project part of my everyday routine for a while. So this book is a testament to that effort. It's actual physical proof that a little bit of work every day really does just build and build and build. I tend to get lost in the process a lot, so it's hard for me to see those individual steps along the way. Even in projects that I'm working on right now, I struggle with this. But looking back, it's really easy for me to be able to see the steps that I took with this book from start to finish. So I'm glad that I have that perspective, and I'm looking forward to finding ways to apply this experience to my work going forwards. This ended up being sort of the short list of things that I felt important to talk about here. There's probably stuff that I missed, definitely small things that I left out of the video for the sake of time. If you're curious about anything related to this project or what it is like to self-publish, ask those questions in the comments down below. I will be very careful to respond to as many of those as possible. And hey, if you're self-published or otherwise, and if you have any tips or experiences that you would like to share, and they don't have to be specific to Amazon or the tools that I used, you should share. Someone would certainly benefit from that. So let's discuss everything down in those comments below. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Drop a like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe if you would like to see more of this type of thing. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.